And welcome back to Janky AF and Year of the Aerostar, episode number 134. Well, we had a rousing response to last two episodes, actually, so Janky do thank you to everyone who saw those episodes. We're on a little bit of a roll here. And we're getting into crunch time, like we're getting into the real cream of the crop here, and again, the running theme, the running narrative right now is I got some insurance money from my 93 Aerostar Sport, which is now going back to the fall. It's the dead of winter right now, so it's not really a good time to buy, but sometimes, if the right one finds you, you kind of got to strike while the iron's hot. And without giving too much away one way or the other, I suppose we should just, get right into it here. So without further ado, here we have a 1992 Ford Aerostar listed for just $1,000 in Grants Pass, Oregon. Grants Pass kind of sounds like Grants Pants, kind of sounds like Grant something else too. I wonder if people in Grants Pass call it something by another name. Anyways, the great state of Oregon, have some good friends out there. And that, that may come in handy one day, because Oregon in particular has a lot of good Aerostars. Ohio has a lot of good Aerostars. Oregon has a lot of good Aerostars. Funny how they kind of like cluster around. And as you can see, very interesting exterior color on this. But before we get into all that, let's get the description of the vehicle. So it's a little bit different oriented here. It just says condition, doesn't say like seller's description, used, fair. The details, as it says here, simply reads, selling my 92 Aerostar, clean title, 146XXX miles. Believed to be a blown head gasket and don't want to deal with it. Clean is a whistle inside. Small cosmetic damage to front right front blinker. Maybe I do have a little bit of dyslexia. Runs and drives, but won't make it far due to the overheating issue. $1,000 or best offer. Takes it home, and all capitals here, selling to scrapyard at the end of the month, 01/2025. Make me an offer, exclamation point. To make me an offer is not in all caps, just to be clear, but it does have an exclamation point. So a lot to get in here. The color is not even like a silver. It's more like a gunmetal gray. And a 92 is an interesting year because it's like the fully flushed out Aerostar. Like you see this 92, you think, oh, it's probably a 96, 97, 95, something like that. 92 is a very interesting year because the Aerostar had become everything it would be by 1992. All-wheel drive was now offered. The extended version was now offered. The grille, the headlights, the flush-mounted headlights, the newer grille style. It's on its third iteration of the grille style now. The interior had been updated. So it was sort of the modern incarnation. Iteration of what the Aerostar would be, but you don't see a ton of 92s, and you realize it's only 1 year removed from really 86 through 91 when you talk about the interior and all that. And then slowly things like all-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, extended length would come along, different trim packages, stuff like that. But 92 is a cool year. And kind of what gives it away is something maybe a 92 is this gunmetal gray. Now, there were silver Aerostars out there. The gold was more common. You don't see a lot of silvers. There's a pamphlet, like a brochure of like a silver sport edition Aerostar, and the thing is absolutely stunning because, all the sports were two-tone, except when they made it in silver. It was all silver, and it was just like this very metallic silver. And the running boards and the sport badging, I believe, might have been in green, but the grille was still body matched, but again, to the silver, but like this bright silver. It just really pops. And I'm notorious for not loving silver vehicles, and I've caught some flack for that. But, on certain vehicles, it really does make a lot of sense. And this gunmetal gray really makes a lot of sense. And as we go along through this Aerostar, I'll say why I really, really like it. And this is kind of an absolute gem here. One thing right off the bat that we'll get is, the gunmetal gray. Like we've talked about white Aerostars, there's so many black accent pieces on the Aerostar, and so it gives it this natural black and white high contrast look. On a silver or gray Aerostar, there's also a ton of silver going on in your Aerostar. So we look at this front section. Okay, your hubcap's silver. The bumper, I mean, this gunmetal gray, I'm calling it, is probably as close as you ever get to getting a vehicle color that matches this gray bumper. And why they picked this gray and used it even on like sort of XLT models or models that, as long as it wasn't a two-tone, a lot of the nice model cars, you'd get a painted bumper usually only when it was a two-tone, so it'd match the secondary bottom color. But rarely, I don't know if the factory ever actually painted the bumpers to match the body color. So in that way, it's kind of like a perpetual version of, these like contractor edition mock-ups. You see like the worker edition Porsche 911 concept mock-up that they do with the plastic bumpers. The Aerostars, like even in the higher trim levels, still had like a gray bumper, and it's just a very strange factoid of the Aerostar. But in this gunmetal gray, it almost looks like it's intentional and body colored. Same with your inserts of your grille. So we have a chrome and gray grille, chrome headlight bezels, dark gray bumper with a black insert, and then chrome little, piping strips. So you have like 3 different levels of sort of grayscale going on here. And then of course your black insert matches with your tires and your black bug guard. Just a really tight, integrated, cohesive aesthetic package here. And I just think it looks so good. Okay, so I'm wearing the gray hat, as you can tell, which matches, but why am I wearing this bright red sweater? Well, boom. This is a red interior Aerostar, and if you know me, and you're probably the same way, red interior Aerostars are like the holy grail. Like I love a red interior Aerostar, and this one, as they mentioned in the description, is clean as a whistle inside. So not just a red interior, but like a really nice red interior. And why I like the red interior so much, as we go back here, you can see the reverse of the vehicle is an extended Model 2, which is very cool. Looks like it's an XL trim level. Doesn't look like there's a speck of rust on it. I mean, even, Oregon's probably a pretty good climate because I don't think they get a lot of rust. And down in the southern states, Tennessee, Florida, Georgia, you don't get any rust, but you do get, like, the sun really beats down on vehicles, and that can like crack your rubber sealing here. So the extremes, either condition, can be detrimental to the vehicle. Here you see the cosmetic damage to right front blinker. That is so easily solved. I mean, you can solve this for, $30 at the junkyard. And notice also, which is kind of giveaway here, is we have a tri-pinstripe in this sort of like maroon burgundy color, which is so nice because it gives you a little, tease to the interior of the vehicle. So look at this. I mean, wow, feast your eyes. Now this does have, I'm trying to pin down, and tell me if you know, because there are some amazing Aerostar aficionados out there who really have this stuff down, like every factoid about the Aerostar. I'm trying to figure out when the red interior was offered. And my best guess is like from 90 to 94. I don't think it was offered like super early on. And I don't think it was offered very late. Sorry, I'm getting a technology, man, it's crazy. I worried about this. I'm using OBS, but I'm using my phone, a little inside baseball here, to as my OBS camera, because I bought an entire expensive setup to use my DSLR, my mirrorless camera, and turns out the phone's just way easier and better anyways. Go figure. If anyone wants to buy a Camlink 4K and a video switcher, let them go real cheap. But then I'm worried, like, if I get a call, does it stop recording? But I don't think it stopped recording. So sorry to interrupt this real gem of an episode here. So I think 90 to 90 now 80, so 86, 87, 88. It might have been 89 because 89 is when sort of the first real changes were made to the Aerostar. I believe that's when Extended came out and four-wheel drive, the Eddie Bauer package may have even been there earlier than that, but the grille moved to the modern style of the grille, but Ford logo in the center instead of up top, which would happen in 92 when the Aerostar sort of was quote unquote finished. The digital dashboard, there's two different types of digital dashboards as well as two different types of analog dashboards. This has the updated analog dashboard. It's very hard to figure out. When they changed the interior and facelifted this modern steering wheel, which was in everything, even Aston Martins, I've covered that, Mercury Capri, like this steering, Mustang Fox bodies, Explorers, this steering wheel was in everything. They changed the dashboard and the instrument cluster from a real sort of janky 80s one to this much more modern one. I love this analog instrument cluster. I have nothing bad to say about it. It gives you all the information you need. I think it looks really nice. I think it's aged well. It's simple. It's bare bones, but it works perfectly well. And I like the look of it. I like the 80s stuff too, but it is just like you can tell that the quality just went up a level and when they updated it in the 90s. 80s has its own cool aesthetic for its own thing. But there was also a digital dashboard instrument cluster, I think even from the very beginning, that was offered in upscale models. And then when the interior got facelifted, there was also another digital dashboard. They upgraded the digital dashboard, but I feel like they're even more rare. I feel like the digital dashboard's actually more common in the sort of 80s Aerostars than when they switched over to the 90s. I don't know if it was expensive to make, so they only put it in like the top of the line, the Eddie Bauer or whatever. I would like to get a digital dashboard. I've heard on the 80s ones that it's pretty plug and play. You can just like swap it in there. On the 92 and beyond, I'm wondering if it's maybe a little bit more tricky because of more complicated electronics. But I don't know. If you know the answer to that, please let me know too. And I'm sure there's probably no putting like a first gen digital dashboard in a 92 and on Aerostar. I'm guessing that doesn't work, if nothing else, just for the shape of the cluster. But anywho, all that is to say, it seems like the red interior came right during those transition years. And that is cool because it probably means there's sort of like, obviously this is the second gen interior, we'll call it. And I'm wondering if, there's some red Aerostars in the first pre-facelift too. I think there probably are. But now I'm looking at it here. This looks like they even, like the vent is red, which I've never seen. Usually all your accessories, over here, all your accessories are black. It's sort of, this is like sort of one unit that they never painted. But it looks like this vent here is actually red, which is crazy if that's true. But you just realize how many, all these panels, all the carpeting, all the steering column sort of cover cluster here, everything is just completely redded out. Your headliner, and it looks so cool. There's a more high quality photo. Your little sort of dinky, worthless cup holders. Even, it is funny what they decided to do red and what they didn't. Because like over here, they're like, okay, we're not doing this gauge cluster surround and the knobs for the lights. That's just like a bridge too far. But pretty much everything got redded out. And it really is just astonishing to see. Here's the back, and you can tell it's sort of like a burgundy, but in the right light, it's a pretty bright red. Not that uncommon, a lot of Buicks, like Cadillacs, whatever. Red was a kind of a common interior. It seemed like you could get gray, red, or blue. Green, I love a green interior. That's more like Malaise era, 70s. I think by the 80s that was gone. But if you can find an old Ford Thunderbird or something like that with a green interior, those are really, really cool. But I think a red interior is awesome. I'm just such a sucker. Now, red seats have always kind of been a thing. Like I think red seats in Audis and Lexuses, you can still get a trim package that includes red seats. They connote like a certain sportiness to them as we go back to the beginning here. But the full redded out interior, you never see that anymore. That's like from a bygone era, unless it's like a Bugatti, unless it's like Ed Bollion's Bugatti, right? And I just think it looks so cool. I like this view of the interior from the back here. You see your dome lights are on. It's funny how dark it looks here too, but in certain light, it looks much more red and much less burgundy. But the reason I like it so much, I mean, so they have to be rare. I mean, yes, they were available maybe half of the Aerostar's life, maybe a third of the Aerostar's life, but how many of those vehicles were actually optioned with the red? Like I feel like just anecdotally, I see more manual transmission Aerostars. I see more sport edition, sport package Aerostars, way more 4-wheel drive Aerostars. Like every sort of little novelty trim level, or not novelty, but everything that's kind of like a cool spec of the Aerostar. Even manual transmissions, I think, maybe like a 2-to-1 ratio almost, because manuals are very rare, but you see them somewhat frequently. Red interior, a very small handful throughout my years, looking at and seeking out Aerostars. So, which has been basically 10 years now. I think that's how long I've had my brown Aerostar. And even before that, I was more, just like drawn to the Aerostar, but I didn't really, I'd never owned a vehicle of my own before. So I didn't really know. I guess that's not true. But before I got the brown one, I wasn't truly, obsessed in a way that was like grounded in the reality of the vehicle. It was more just like sort of a longing and appreciating from afar. Whatever, neither here nor there. The red interior is very, very rare, and I would love to know stats on just how rare and for how many years they ran and why they got rid of the red interior, or why they introduced the red interior. You see blue interiors fairly often from like around the same era. By like the mid 90s, by 94, it was pretty much just gray and gold. It seems like that was sort of being phased out. And the cool thing about the Aerostar's 12-year run from 86 to 97 is a lot happened in those years, right? Like a lot changed in terms of taste and style, just on the aesthetics of the thing, not to mention engineering, culture, technology, all that stuff. Like it's cool to see it live this lifespan of 12 years, where a modern car never lives 12 years in a single generation. It's just completely unheard of nowadays. Even back then, it was quite rare, and yes, it went through minor changes. Some of the dashboard probably being the biggest one, some stuff on the headlights and grille, but nothing that ever really impacted the look of the vehicle. Nothing where if you're not looking for it, then you just see the shape of the Aerostar, and it's evergreen and continuous. It's just an Aerostar is an Aerostar is an Aerostar. Now we know that there's tons of different iterations and specs and little nuances and details, and that's what makes it fun. But superseding that, and this is a good thing, I think, is that the Aerostar is this very singular design and idea and concept and vehicle. And that's why it's so cool, because it just, stands alone atop a mountain. So the red interior, is, I think, one of the real holy grail gems of like sort of Aerostar collecting. And I do love this red piping, and you can tell even it's very much like the gray seats, where there it is two-tone, the color's slightly different, but that may just be because of the actual patterns are different, even if they use the same dye to tint these, because this is more of like a heather like almost herringbone pattern. It gives it a slightly lighter color than the top. So even these like most underrated seats in the automotive world, they're comfortable, they bolster you, you ride at a very nice level. The armrest is just at the absolute perfect height, so you can have one arm on the armrest, the other arm on this little carved out divot. And being modeled after a spaceship, you really are like a pilot, where you have two hands on the wheel, so you're not being dangerous in any way, but both your elbows are just in this perfect resting position. And so it's like driving from like, a comfortable armchair. It's phenomenal. It really, the ergonomics of it are not lost, despite all this sort of like, especially nowadays, we talk about like this 80s radwood kind of cool thing, but the actual practical use of the vehicle is not lost. And that's why I think it's so cool, because it's like this, in my eyes, timeless. Some people would say like very 80s vehicle, but so is a Countach, and those things are legendary. And yes, I am comparing an Aerostar to a Countach, like get over it. But actually, the actual functionality to deviate from the Countach, is notoriously sort of like, very difficult to back up. I think they're known when they're maintained correctly, actually, as being fairly reliable, but certainly your driving position's a little strange. In the Aerostar, it actually, ergonomically still was and is a very practical, good vehicle. Not the greatest gas mileage in the world. That's like one thing that the technology just really didn't allow for. Can you imagine an Aerostar plug-in hybrid nowadays? It'd be amazing. But the red interior, I'll keep coming back to it, is just like, words don't do it justice. You just have to look at it and see how much it pops, how much everything. And I don't even know how they would stain or dye these materials, but then, you have your 2 sets of bench seats. And then the gray, to go back to it here, it's funny because I don't see the pin. This is not a high quality photo, but I don't see the pinstripe on the driver's side. And I'm wondering if the pinstripe is only on the passenger side, although I don't really see it here either. Maybe it's only on the front. That's very weird. It's right around like the headlight line, which would be here. It might just not be showing up in the photo. Anywho, there is a spec of a Ferrari 308, and red seats I do think like kind of connote, as I said before, sporting. And going with not loving gray or silver on cars, dark grays I tend to like more, in this gunmetal certainly works very, very well in the Aerostar. So, but there's a great spec. I'm not sure if it was on Bring a Trailer. I'll try to track it down. I'm sure it wasn't a super rare spec, but certainly not super common either. And it was this almost same exterior-interior combination where it was sort of like a darker gunmetal gray, silver, over a red or burgundy interior. And on this Ferrari, it looked so good. I mean, really classic color combination, like green with tan interior is a very classic color combination, green over brown. I think silver or gray, almost specifically this darker gunmetal gray over a red or burgundy interior, is a really, really classic spec. So it was just cool to see that this is that, and the exterior color almost doesn't matter when you have a red interior. I think I've seen white, I've seen red on red, which is like I think I'm the Ed Bolian Bugatti spec. I think this is the first time I've seen gray, and certainly white with red interior looks good too, but I think this is the first time I've seen this dark gunmetal gray over a red interior. So just really, really special. And then the heartbreaking thing is, it sounds like in 3 days this thing is going to the scrapyard. So if anyone's out there in Oregon and you have a place to store it, I would even consider like pitching in to help save this thing. So Oregon Aerostar community or West Coast Aerostar community generally, if we can save this thing, I mean, that interior alone, would be worth it to save. But if it just needs a head gasket, I mean, it's a rust-free Aerostar here. Like, we really, I'd be such a shame to see this thing go to the scrapyard. Now, if it went to the scrapyard, you could probably still take the whole, gut the whole interior and take it out of there and rescue it. But at that point, just get the van and get it someplace. It really is a shame that these things, for all the money and wealth and resources that are out there in the world, now obviously, things like, poverty and hunger and housing need to be addressed. And the fact that those things are not being addressed is obviously like very criminal. But if you just want to stay in the material world, I've been watching all these episodes about like these giant mansions, and then this Ennis guy reviews the mansions, but then there's this other guy, Arvin, who reviews the reviews of the mansions, and he's like, whatever, this little rabbit hole I've been going down. And you see these $70-80 million mansions where you have a $250,000 light fixture, and and the houses are not that great. I mean, he points out all these flaws about how that you wouldn't even ever use this giant room because of whatever, the ingress or the egress or the way it connects to the kitchen or blah, blah, blah. And you just see just the crazy amounts of money that is spent. And here we have, this absolute classic vehicle that there's got to be such a few examples of in this specific combination. And it's only $1,000, and there should be a line of people queuing up to throw money at this vehicle to save it and preserve it and do something with it and fix it. And here we are. This is just the sort of the world we live in, and that underdog chip on the shoulder mentality can be good, but not to to end on a sad note here, but this thing might just completely get scrapped, and it is sort of like, just, boy, time goes marching on, and without a clue, and people just it really makes you feel like like your priorities are so, or the things you care about are so alien to the rest of the world, like with every passing year. And I can only imagine what older folks feel like. But that's the way things go. But we can capture little moments in time here through the internet superhighway, and on our specific lane of the internet superhighway, we drive Ford Aerostars, and it's been a pleasure to do so here today. So, thank you very much for watching this episode of Year of the Aerostar here on Janky AF. Just an absolutely stunning, astounding example. We will have another episode for you very soon, and until then, Janky do thanky.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.